Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another video. I hope everyone's having a great day. Before watching the video, please subscribe and like it. Chrisley Knows Best reality star Todd Chrisley is speaking out more and more about his time in prison. He and his wife, Julie, were convicted on charges of tax evasion and bank fraud. They were sentenced to a combined term of 19 years behind bars. However, President Trump made their wishes come true and granted them a full and unconditional pardon last week. Now, Todd reveals that the prison system needs some major changes. Why does he think this? Keep reading to get all the details. Todd Chrisley, former reality TV star known for Chrisley Knows Best, has reportedly spoken out about the conditions and treatment he has faced while serving his prison sentence. Sources close to Chrisley say he feels he is being treated unfairly compared to other inmates and is calling for significant changes within the prison system. Currently serving time for bank fraud and tax evasion, Chrisley has raised concerns about the consistency and fairness of inmate treatment, claiming that he has faced restrictions and conditions that do not align with standard procedures. According to his family and legal representatives, Chrisley believes his celebrity status has led to unnecessary scrutiny and even retaliation from prison staff. He has allegedly experienced harsher limitations on communication and visitation compared to other inmates, as well as delays in receiving necessary medical attention and supplies. His legal team has been vocal in recent weeks, suggesting that Chrisley's rights as an inmate are not being properly observed and that the disparity in treatment could be linked to his public profile and prior media exposure. Chrisley's wife Julie is also serving time at a separate facility for related charges. Their children have been advocating for more transparency in how federal prisons handle high-profile inmates. They argue that while punishment is expected for any conviction, all inmates deserve to be treated with dignity and equality, regardless of their background or prior fame. The family has even hinted at the possibility of taking legal action if the alleged mistreatment continues without proper investigation or reform. Prison reform advocates have begun to take notice of Chrisley's situation, using it as an example of broader systemic issues within the American correctional system. They argue that unequal treatment based on social or celebrity status only highlights ongoing inconsistencies and the urgent need for reform in how inmates are managed. The growing attention to Chrisley's case may draw more scrutiny to federal prison policies, especially those regarding medical care, communication rights, and the disciplinary process. Chrisley himself has remained vocal from behind bars, reportedly drafting statements and communicating through his legal team to express his desire for accountability and change. He has emphasized that his goal is not special treatment but fairness, equal standards, and humane conditions for all inmates. His supporters hope that by bringing attention to his experience, other inmates who may be facing similar challenges without a public voice might also benefit from increased awareness and policy review. The situation continues to develop as Chrisley's team pushes for investigations and improved oversight. Whether this effort leads to actual changes in federal prison policies remains to be seen, but for now, Todd Chrisley is determined to use his platform to demand better treatment not just for himself, but for all those behind bars. Todd Chrisley wants major prison reform. Chrisley Knows Best star Todd Chrisley agreed to a press conference with his daughter, Savannah, on Friday. The interview took place in Nashville just a few days after he was released from a Florida prison. One of the things he discussed during the interview was how he was treated differently in prison than other inmates. He said, "I have met some wonderful men. I have listened to some horrific stories about things that have gone on in our system. I will continue to fight for all of the guys that I dealt with and that I was blessed to be with at FPC Pensacola. I will continue to expose the injustices that go on there and throughout the Bureau of Prisons, BOP." This isn't all he said. Todd also alleges that he received better treatment than black men who were also incarcerated with him. He wants to bring awareness to the systemic problems that are found within prisons. Todd went on to say, "Being in the prison system, anyone that says that it's a fair shake, it's not. because I dealt with young African American males in the prison that I was in that were not treated the same. He shared that they were denied programming and access to other things. Todd said that while he was in there, he was not denied these things, and that everyone should know why. He believes that this is the bigger picture that needs to be looked at within society as a whole. Everyone should be treated as one. Of course, he was alluding to the fact that he is white. However, he could have also been treated differently because he is a reality television star. Reality television star Todd Chrisley is speaking out from behind bars, calling for sweeping changes to the United States prison system. The former star of Chrisley Knows Best is currently serving time for fraud-related charges and has become increasingly vocal about what he describes as deep systemic problems in the way prisons operate across the country. Chrisley insists that his experiences have exposed major flaws in prison management, inmate rights, and overall conditions. Through his legal team and family, Chrisley has expressed concerns about treatment he views as unequal and unnecessarily harsh. He believes that being a public figure has contributed to the level of scrutiny he faces while incarcerated and says that he is not asking for special treatment, but for basic fairness and decency. His statements point to what he calls inconsistent enforcement of rules, limited access to medical care, restricted communication with loved ones, and a general lack of accountability within the prison system. Chrisley has also taken issue with how inmates are handled based on status or background, arguing that this leads to inequality and emotional distress. He says many prisoners, including himself, are subject to treatment that borders on inhumane, and that reform is long overdue. His comments have sparked interest among advocates who argue that prisons across the country suffer from a lack of oversight and transparency. Family members, especially his children, have echoed his concerns and are pushing for public awareness around the conditions he and others face. They say the goal is not to excuse any wrongdoing, but to make sure all inmates are treated with dignity and that correctional facilities are held to higher standards. The family has also indicated they are exploring legal channels to ensure that Todd Chrisley's rights are protected during his sentence. Prison reform organizations have started to pay closer attention to his case, using it as a talking point in larger conversations about justice system reform. They say Chrisley's celebrity may help shine a spotlight on issues that everyday inmates deal with, but rarely get the chance to discuss publicly. These include overcrowding, insufficient medical services, lack of mental health support, and inconsistent disciplinary actions. According to those close to him, Chrisley is committed to using his voice for change and has been documenting his experiences with the intention of advocating for long-term improvements. He reportedly wants to speak with lawmakers, policy experts, and fellow advocates to help push for legislative changes that would address what he sees as the biggest failures in the current system. While his case remains controversial, the message Todd Chrisley is promoting resonates with a growing number of Americans calling for justice reform. As more attention is directed toward his claims, it remains to be seen whether his efforts will lead to lasting change in how prisons operate and how inmates are treated across the country. What the men thought when he left. Todd Chrisley also noted that when he left prison after the pardon, there were 317 inmates currently there. He revealed how they all yelled at him not to forget them. Chrisley vows he will not forget them, and that is a promise. He, along with his family, plans to work toward getting big changes made within the prison system. Chase Chrisley has also already talked about injustices that occur within the prison system and how there needs to be major reform. Together, this will become something they continue to fight for and work toward change. What do you think about Todd Chrisley insinuating that he received better treatment in prison because he is white? When he walked out of the room, there was a silence that none of the men could quite explain. It was not just the closing of a door or the end of a conversation. It was something heavier, something that lingered long after his footsteps faded down the hallway. For weeks they had watched him, listened to him, relied on him, and whether they admitted it or not, they had grown used to his presence. His departure felt like a shift, like something important had come to a quiet end. Inside the walls of the facility, days rarely brought change, faces stayed the same, routines rarely shifted, but he had brought something different. He spoke with calm, even when tensions were high. He listened. When others brushed off concerns, he noticed the small things that most people ignored: a word of encouragement, a shared laugh, a simple nod had become part of daily life, and his absence created a void that none of the men could immediately fill. Some sat quietly staring at the space he once occupied, others pretended it did not matter, focusing on the next task or the next hour. But the truth was, it did matter. He had become a kind of anchor in a place where stability was rare. He offered a sense of order without force, respect without fear. In a world built on rules and time and consequence, he reminded them they were still human. One man said he was surprised how much it hit him that morning. He expected to feel relief or even indifference, but instead he felt like something valuable had been taken away. Another admitted he had not realized how much he looked forward to their brief conversations until they were gone. A third said nothing at all, but stared for hours at the empty space at the table where he used to sit. There were rumors about where he went. Some said he had been transferred, others believed he had completed his time and left the system entirely, but no one had real answers, and in truth, most did not need them. What mattered was not where he had gone, but the space he left behind and how it made them feel. In places like this, strength is often measured in silence and distance. Emotion is rarely shown openly, but it finds its way into the smallest details: a pause in conversation, a longer than usual glance at the floor, a quiet walk around the yard. For all the ways they tried to move on, his absence followed them like a shadow. Whether he ever comes back or not is unknown, but the men will remember the difference he made, not through grand gestures or dramatic moments, but through quiet dignity and presence that made them feel seen. In a place where being forgotten is easy, that kind of impact is not just rare, it is unforgettable. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, America Trends 24, and stay with us.